their own transportation, and they not gonna, a lot of them, they say we don't want to use the public transport, and that's a fact if you look at it. But I mean, if you look at the pictures and how you challenge that one, okay, you cannot, socioeconomic, you have to look at the socioeconomic in this. You're gonna look at the ridership into part of it, and the who's gonna finance the project. However, if this is the big challenge, you know, how to justify the project and how you're going to deal with it. So in Lusail, we have to establish something that for the management, the higher management, several points that we have to do it. What we're going to be able to do. In the traffic that we see and how the development for the TM transportation modeling for Qatar, it shows a lot of the future to 2030 and what's the ridership and how we're going to be able to work with that ridership. Now we realize that only one company to bring it and start working on the rail, it was a big challenge, and we could not justify a lot of the routes. So then there's a different approach which is hired by CPO, Central Planning Office, that to look in all the projects in Qatar, not only the rail, not only the highway. So we have a major consultant taking care of all that. And there's actually, if you see the monorail that, or the people mover that we used to have in the middle of this city, just to serve the area of the district, the downtown district, has been at this point postponed to the future because of this one here. The model, after the created by the CPO, looked and what's the ridership, what's the function, and how much the project is going to cost. Okay. We know they challenged that one and that one for the price of that and the economic, the social networking. But in Doha, we know, I mean, Qatar, we have the money. That's the issue, you know. We don't want to look at the ridership. They have the money to construct and do some new project. Logistic of that one in there was a big issue. Logistic, because it's already, the city is built and it's small. It's not like a huge city that could expand. You have to work within the parameter of Doha. Doha is a small place. So that was a big challenge for us.
Dr. Ramiz, do you want to maybe comment on this? And also, how do you develop the skill sets internally in government to be able to work out who you want as your advisors, even as you start the project?
Actually, I have a different point of view, because our experience showed that, you know, as my colleague mentioned, the environment that we are working in the GCC countries is not the typical environment that, you know, we bring from international experience. For example, all the issues that you mentioned about, you know, developing a railway project or mass transport system, you know, economic, financial returns and the social impact and saving the environment and efficient mode, honestly, it does not ring a bell. You know, there is a disconnect between us as technicians, technical people, and the people who make the decision and set up the policy. So number one, you need to narrow this gap, and as I mentioned in my presentation, you need to speak their language, because otherwise they will not understand us, and we will continue having this issue of struggle. I can tell you one thing, during the feasibility study, even before it, the senior officials, they said, why do you want to do a feasibility study? We know the project is not feasible. And that's a fact, you know. So why do you want to do it? In fact, we did not want to do it just to prove to you that this is financially or economically viable. We want to do it because we want to understand this project, to set up the parameters, alignment, you know, what kind of ridership we expect, how much it would cost you, how you want to implement it, what are the environmental implications, and so forth. Not because economic or financial viability, because already they have made the decision to go forward. So you need to narrow this gap. You need to speak their language to be able to communicate the message. Otherwise, nothing would fly, you know. And as you said, you know, you need to have the championship, you know, by keeping the dialogue open, by putting in place into these agencies, you know, your team basically, and they will be your advocate to basically lobby for this project and make sure it continues, support for its development. I don't honestly feel comfortable with the term the control process, because it's a partnership, you know, process that between the private sector and the government in developing any of the railway projects, you know. In fact, I'm not advocate either of the master plans that most of the GCC countries have been developing in the past 20 years. We reached in Saudi Arabia the 9th or the 10th development plan. But if you look at it, actually how much has been implemented from that is very marginal. So the point is, the needs for the countries are very well defined in a way. You know, how to approach these projects are understood. So the success factor, if I may just conclude with that, is with your expertise, how to be able to understand the current situation, the specific situation of that country, and work with them within that environment, and along the process to try to modify it, to bring them up to, if I may, capacity and, you know, expertise. This is where most of the challenge lies. Honest to God, is not the technicalities of the project, is not the financial of the project, whether we like it or not, but these are the facts, and this is how, you know, we can fly with the projects.
So you can hold on to that. So the takeaway, actually, which I find really fascinating, is that the primary goal, from your point of view, on the government side, is to communicate, is actually to communicate as much as possible with the private sector, and to have that bilateral dialogue going on all the time. And going back to my question, in terms of skill sets within government to be able to foster that communication, you still have to have those skills within government to create that dialogue. How do governments go about actually creating those skill sets?
In fact, you know, for example, in this railway project, we have people working for this project at the Ministries of Finance, Transport, and even Customs and Immigration now. So what we have done, you know, we are building training program and capacity building. You know, we bring them to workshops. You know, in fact, you know, we have conducted 3 country visits. You know, they visited, you know, to China, to Taiwan, to Korea, and in Europe, a couple of countries, in the United States, they went to Turkey, to Spain. And this is all an effort. Those people who go and have hands-on experience, and then they come back, they understand very well what the project, what the requirements are, what the needs. So in fact, by default, we are building the capacity from ground. And as I mentioned, you know, each of the member states have a project management unit. Like, for example, the Secretary General, we had to fight for strengthening the capacity and forming a project management unit. And the way we see it, it will be the nuclear for basically spinning off the GCC Railway Authority. That was the case for the North-South Railway project. I worked in it at the beginning heavily, and Dr. He knows about it. And we formed this project management unit at the Ministry of Finance in Saudi Arabia. And now you talk about a huge company, Saudi Railway Company, who is mandated with the construction, implementation, and operation of, I could say, most of the railway network in Saudi Arabia.
Okay, thank you. Are there any points or questions people want to raise to the panel?
Are we allowed to ask questions?
You're allowed to ask questions. Yes, there's a gentleman at the back who'd like to ask a question of us. But then you can ask a question afterwards.
Last one.
Please could you state your name and organisation?
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Ramiz, for the introduction of this ambitious project. I'm just confused. Maybe I'm not focused. At the beginning in your talk, you started with a project cost of something like 10.5 billion, and there will be addition has been indicated, taking it up to 20 billion. And then a figure of 200 billion is mentioned. I'm just confused if you clarify on this.
Okay, I'm sorry to confuse you, but the GCC railway that links all the member states, 2,200 kilometers, The cost of it is about 15 point, let's say, 5 billion US dollar. 4.5 billion of this cost is the proposed new causeway that will be in the vicinity of the existing King Fahd causeway. That's one. If you go to the 25.5 billion US dollar, that is the option at the time when we were thinking about, high-speed train. With that means electrification and the whole infrastructure will be different and the technology used different. Talking about the 150 to 200 billion US dollar, that includes all the railway development in the GCC country, meaning you're talking about a network of a minimum 10,000 kilometer, which includes the GCC railway plus the national railway within each country. Saudi Arabia has approximately about 5,000 kilometer. Oman now is second largest, is about 2,000. In Qatar maybe, and Kuwait is about maybe 400 kilometer, 350, 400. And United Arab Emirates is about 1,200. So you add that network totaling to about 10,000 kilometer, an investment in the whole railway sector of about 150 to 200 billion US dollar.
And that includes the metros and the...
So what is to be completed by 2018 and will be operational? Which
This is the part of the GCC railway. Okay, but there are national plans. For example, in Saudi Arabia, there are projects that would finish after 2020 even, because this is, as I show in one of my slides, it's the Saudi Railway Master Plan that talks about 5,000 to 6,000 kilometers. It's not going to all be implemented at the same time. North-South Railway is nearing completion, maybe within a year and a half. The Haramain High Speed is another maybe 3 years to finish. And then the land bridge with connecting, between Riyadh and Jeddah, they have not even started the detail engineering design. So you can do the math, maybe another 5, 6 years, it will be completed. So if you talk about the 10,000 kilometer minimum of railway network, you're talking a minimum of maybe 10 years to complete at different stages. But the 2018, it's mandatory for all member states to comply with, is for the GCC railway. So let's say in the Sultanate of Oman, you have about 350 kilometers from the border with the United Arab Emirates. That's part of the GCC railway. It has to be completed by 2018. Rest of it, you have your own schedule. I know that the national plan, to first priority is to link it to Duqm, and then the second, phase is basically to continue into the Salalah area.
And then there are also links planned, for example, to Jordan, outside of the GCC area.
In fact, linking internationally, there are two links. One to Jordan, which is already, it is already under discussion, and they will, link it. Jordan has to change the gauge and the design specification, especially for phosphate moving. And there is also an ongoing discussion, has been going, to link Kuwait city into the border of Iraq. And of course, eventually, then you will go to the Middle East area, Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan.
Yeah.
Remain to be seen. But.
Yeah, we should see.
Okay, on the GCC grid or GCC network, if you look, which is to be completed in 2018, where we are standing now in terms of percentage, are we 10% completed, let's say, 20%?
I can't really give percentages, but I can give you a schedule that agreed upon. Basically, the detail engineering design phase should be completed by this year, beginning of 2014. Several states have already completed, and the construction will commence by almost end of next year, 2014, and that would take anywhere between 4 to 5 years until the 2018 for member states to complete. So we don't assess it as percentages now, because actually there is no construction taking place except in the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. But this is the time schedule. If you ask me this in maybe beginning of next year, I will have much better answer, because then we would have the master schedule and we know exactly where are the critical milestones and what dates that we have to meet in the implementation of the GCC railway.
Is Oman part planned and defined already, or still to be?
It's very well planned. It's very well defined. In fact, they have done preliminary design for it, and they are very much on schedule. And again, I'm very happy to say Oman is one of the states that is always on time on delivering on their commitment, always. And any requirements we ask, that's true. They always deliver it in exactly the time they agree to. Remember, the steering committee is representation from the member states. So when they meet, they have minutes of meeting, they are obligatory, that goes to the minister, they endorse. So whatever dates and schedule we agree to and status of work progress, it will be adhered to by all member states.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I just, I know, Dr. Owens, you want to ask a question as well, but before you do that, can I just ask our other speaker, Mr. Al-Ashrafi, one question concerning the urban rail systems. And you brought out a very interesting point about the fact that classically, when you've built an urban transport system, you've looked at the infrastructure first, and then you've looked at the rolling stock afterwards. The infrastructure is the key. But what you brought out in your presentation was that with the technological developments now in rolling stock, particularly the tram systems which avoid the catenary, it seems to me that you have to plan your rolling stock procurement as part of your infrastructure development at the outset, because you don't want to be digging up the railway lines as soon as you've laid them. What level of complexity does that introduce into the project planning process?
Okay, just only, as you know from the presentation when I made it, I showed some of the section that we went to phases. And in the beginning, we had look at the city, you know, for requirement that we established for the LRT or for from the early stage of the concept design. As indication from Lusail city, we want a green city. We don't want any catenary wiring cables on the streets because of the enhancement, and look at the city, you know, aesthetic point of view. We need you guys to look in the system that can provide this kind of technology. So the purpose of that, and the same time, the challenge is the city has been developing and contractor working on the infrastructure, and at the same time we are in the planning stage. So how we develop that one? We said, okay, let's go, this is our criteria. The criteria we established, okay, we will take a range between all these 5 systems that we collected in or get information from. Find out the characteristic of the car, look in the dynamic envelope, the structural envelope. Then from that we conclude that this is the best that to do the tunnel design and construct the tunnel with the parameter of which car, the biggest car that will be allowed to have, which is we allow the tunnel to accommodate any of those systems. Then because we had to build the tunnel earlier, now up to this moment there's a lot of challenge for us because we did not pick up the rolling stock or the system allowed, that we could not finish some of the facts, the signal communication, substations, power bulk substation. That one is not only done, or we're not going to be able to do it unless we define the system that we are working in. So from that point, the design already hold, and the construction till we finalize the rolling stock manufacturer that will bring in on board. Then we will be able to finalize and start working.
So it's quite a complex problem.
So if you see, we built 10 kilometers of a tunnel, and in a big envelope that will be accommodate that, and an assumption also too for ventilation, for fire rating, for the NFP 130 requirement, each car which one we need. Most of the European manufacturer, we are in the Qatar working in the big challenge is the NFP 130 is a requirement from the state, the fire regulation for the transit in the tunnel. This is different than the European standard, and how we're going to be able to meet that one here. But just wanted to point one out is the important for what we did is I come from the US, and we work in a lot of systems in there. So education is the major item that we work in. How to know, everybody knows there is a Europe, a lot of people goes from GCC country to Europe, to the state and they see how the technology, but really actually how it works and how we're going to view it. In this education and exploring and educating people into this market, that's a big achievement that we established. That's why we could in Lusail, from the CEO, all the partner and the directors, that we went to 10 countries, as Dr. Ramis said, that we took them all to Europe, visiting countries, challenge for the, show them in China, Germany, and all that stuff. And courses has been given also too, to be able to come back with the support, because that's what we need, support. I will be able to convince and tell them, okay, this is the best system, but how are they going to convince their own people and the higher management? So that's the points that we concentrated on. By educating and exploring this and the manufacture, that's where we succeeded to this point in developing our system. For the metro right now, we're building the tunnel. Actually, there's 2 contracts we are releasing for the metro. One for the infrastructure and one for the rolling stock and system. Even though we established the TBM and the size of the tunnel, but it's still, we have a challenge right now because we did not choose the rolling stock and which system we're going to use. So we still have a lot of work to do.
That's fascinating.
But at this point, we left RFP for the metro rolling stock and system is already on the street to collect and find out which system we'll be using.
Okay, thank you. We have to close the session now, but Dr. Ramis, can I give you the last word so you can ask the last question?
Just very quickly, in fact, I want to comment on the issue of the rolling stock. We have maybe a much easier experience in the North-South Railway project, where in fact we were a little bit late, but we caught up. We brought the operator on board, as you recall, early on. And in fact, when they announced the supervision consultancy contract, it was a big hit in the news in Saudi Arabia because, my God, this is 700 million Saudi riyal. What kind of supervision consultancy? In fact, it had an 8-component, consultancy in addition to the traditional supervision, And basically, we need to do the rolling stock specification, and we need to do other, items in there. But it was a much, different experience for us. And in fact, it was successful because they have to specify the rolling stock, streamline it in the overall process. But in fact, I want to leave the audience with one thing now. The mass transportation in general, in all of the GCC country, is something new to us. If I may use a terminology that we don't look up high to because of our culture and the environment, the way we live. Basically, why should I leave my car, my luxury life, so I can go ride the metro? And is it efficient? Is it clean? Is it safe? Is it up to the standard? And so forth. We will face these challenges in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh especially. The point is we need to start working on the shift and change of paradigm of the public. And there are organizations, there are consultants very specialized on that to basically take them from their comfortable existing environment of using their own private cars into the public transport system, whether it's railway, metro, or whatever, buses even. And we will face these challenges soon. A successful example took place in Dubai. When they build their metro now, it's full. They have worked onto the soft side of the public campaign, public information package. I will just ask one question that has maybe 2 sets to Dr. Muhammad. You mentioned about the alignment, and when you have mega projects, railway, metro, very expensive. If you continue changing the alignment and revise the alignment, that would have significant impact on the cost of the project. Without mentioning the name of the project, we ended up paying over 60% over cost because of the alignment change all the time. So what is your experience in that in Qatar of modifying or changing the alignment? What could have been done differently to freeze this alignment? Because with that, there are significant additional costs to it. And how does the Lusail metro or metro project in general in Qatar link or taken into consideration into the other public transportation, whether it's bus system or the railway system. And the issue of during the planning and the design to have a station and interconnectivity and intermodal is how did you tackle these two issues of the alignment and the networking with other modes of transport?
That's a very hard question that he asked me. You know, he's testing me. But what we did in the beginning, when we had a DBI as a consultant to do the design and to see the TMBQ from that, a result of where actually alignment was developed. Alignment was developed in several stages, and actually we had a lot of changes. And from a grade to a tunnel to this, because we get the challenges of influence and political influence. Let's see, put it this way, we could not put the alignment in this area, even though it's a straightforward in this, but we could not do it because you don't have the room for it, and you don't, I don't want to, you know, some of the stuff that you cannot do it. Actually, we forced to move out of it. For instance, the next to the American base, and we had a beautiful straight alignment. We could not do it. That's connecting this because of we are very close proximity to the base. So we had to move the alignment from that area. Other areas that because of the challenges between the metro, and also the LRT, plus the West People Mover, that also we had to work and rework the alignment in those sections to be able to get the most ridership and the connectivity to serve the people actually. For LaSalle City, we had a 3 area where we connect to the metro. And the Pearl area, which is we have a model station, intermodal station that will be the metro, and the LRT connecting before in the Pearl area. And that will be also looking in the Pearl that they have a people mover, will be future connecting to our stations. However, if this not because of the financial situation, or the financial that from the Pearl, there will be busing into that area. For the LaSalle City, we made the LRT so flexible. You have a station every 400 meters that will be able to connect to the metro on the commercial boulevard in one of the area, and also to the entrance. So for the city of LaSalle, we connected to the metro in 3 locations. End of the city in the Gulf District, in the middle of the city on the commercial boulevard, and the Pearl where we're connecting the 3. So you have a function completely from all the area to the metro. In addition, you have Qatar, the new city of the cultural city that they built. Also there is a station for the metro that will be connecting from there to the metro, and you do the changes. So the station, vertical station, already vertical circulation already been figured, and we are working in it. We still actually, some of the area we change in the alignment, but for the last moment, even for instance, the metro on the Pearl station, we had to modify the alignment to be able to functionally find out accommodating alignment to integrate the station together. So we almost saved in 1 kilometers of length, plus about 200, 300 million because of that. Tunnels cost a lot of money. So we're looking at that in the same time, planning. We need to have a schedule the challenge is we have the schedule to meet. And we have the 222. And 222, that was the obligation. 220 is the date that we have to complete our system. So from that we go back, and we some of the items, some of the alignment, it was only a line on the street, just only not developed fully as a preliminary, just to be able to move ahead and let the project move on.
Okay.
So we are actually in the point, even we awarded the contracts, but there is some tweaking that we are doing.
But the important message here is that realignment or respecification sometimes can save money, not just cost extra money.
Definitely.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Rose, do you want to have a final comment on
Just
that?
one last
Yeah.
thing, the reason I raised the issue of the alignment, we don't spend sufficient time on really defining the alignment and securing the necessary approvals, because they see it at the beginning of the project. It is cumbersome, lengthy, and maybe it can go along. They get used to the fine tuning and changes in the alignment. Our experience, with no exception, shows this is a significant element to the design of our projects, and cost overrun and time overrun. Every single project I can name to you, I know for a fact, the alignment is the biggest issue. So my question, why don't we spend more money and do it right? Of course, you always change and fine tune your alignment, but not to the extent that where in one project, the variation order, the cost of the project 6 billion, the variation order is 7 billion. That's a significant change.
Yeah. I think it's a great question, and if I may, I'll raise it in the afternoon session as well when we look at project management, because it's a real practical question. This is really rolling up the sleeves. This is a real practical question as to how you deal with variations of the project after they've started and how to avoid unnecessary cost. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I think we should stop this session and break for coffee. As you've noticed, we're running a little bit late, so I'd like to reconvene by 1 o'clock. Because I don't want to shortchange you or shortchange our speakers. But in the meantime, would you please join me in thanking our two speakers who've been with us this morning. Thank you.